Somewhere in America right now, a father is losing to his 8-year-old on hole 14, the one with the windmill, and he is genuinely upset about it. That windmill has been breaking a man's putt since 1962, and somebody, somewhere, owns that windmill. Here's the pitch you've probably heard. Buy some land, pour some fake turf, bolt down a few obstacles, and you're collecting cash from families who will pay $10 a head to hit a ball past a dinosaur. No employees to speak of, no spoilage, no supply chain, just quarters and laughter forever. It is, like most just collect the money businesses, a story that skips the part where the windmill needs a new motor, the turf needs replacing every 6 years, and half your revenue happens in a 12-week window between Memorial Day and Labor Day. This is what it actually costs and actually earns to own a mini golf course.
Mini-golf sits in a strange, durable corner of the entertainment economy. It doesn't compete with streaming, and it doesn't really compete with theme parks either. It competes with, what do we do for 2 hours on a Tuesday that costs less than $40 and doesn't require a babysitter? That's the actual product, a cheap, low-commitment outing that works for a first date, a birthday party, a bored family on vacation, or a company trying to look fun for one afternoon a year. The US has roughly 4,000 standalone mini-golf and family entertainment venues, and the category has been quietly stable for decades. It doesn't boom, but it also doesn't die, because the underlying need never goes away. The customer isn't buying golf, they're buying a controlled, low-stakes activity for a group with mixed ages and mixed athletic ability. That's why the successful operators don't think of themselves as being in the golf business at all. They think of themselves as being in the cheap group activity business, and mini-golf is just the vehicle. The ones who forget that and try to make the course more harder or more prestigious are usually the ones who go out of business.
Before a single ball is putted, the land has to be acquired or leased, and this is where the low overhead myth starts to fall apart. A course needs somewhere between 1 and 2 acres, depending on hole count and parking, and that land needs to be visible from a road. Mini-golf is an impulse and drive-by business, not a destination business, so a hidden lot is a dead lot, regardless of how good the course is. Buying that land outright in a decent suburban commercial corridor runs anywhere from $400,000 to over $1.5 million, depending on region. Most owners lease instead, at $4,000 to $10,000 a month, specifically to avoid tying up capital in dirt. Then comes site work, grading, drainage, and utility hookups, because 18 holes of course means 18 holes of concrete subbase and irrigation lines underneath the turf. Site prep alone commonly runs $150,000 to $300,000 before a single obstacle is installed. Permitting is its own slow tax. Zoning variances for outdoor recreational use, health department sign-off on any food or beverage service, ADA-compliant pathing between every hole, and lighting permits if the course plans to operate after dark, which most do, since evening is peak revenue. Permitting delays of 4 to 8 months are routine, and every one of those months is rent or loan interest, with zero revenue coming in. By the time the first shovel of dirt is turned, a realistic owner has usually spent $200,000 to $500,000 and produced nothing a customer can see yet. That's the part the YouTube thumbnail never shows.
The course itself, 18 holes with obstacles, elevation changes, water features, and themed structures, typically runs $15,000 to $40,000 per hole, depending on complexity, meaning a full themed 18-hole build lands between $270,000 and $700,000. The cheap end gets you flat concrete paths and basic ramps. The expensive end gets you the windmill, the waterfall, and the giant fiberglass dinosaur that ends up on the course's Instagram. Artificial turf isn't a one-time cost, it's a depreciating asset with a 6 to 8 year usable life before UV fading and compaction make it look tired, at $8 to $14 per square foot to replace across a full course. Water features need pumps, filtration, and in cold climates, full winterization systems, adding $30,000 to $80,000 depending on how many water holes the design includes.
If the operator adds the increasingly common batting cage attachment, and most new builds do because it captures a different demographic and extends the revenue day, that's another $80,000 to $150,000 for cages, pitching machines, netting systems, and the concrete pad they sit on. Lighting for night play, a modest arcade or snack counter build-out, and a point-of-sale system round out the build. All in, a new mid-size course with a batting cage add-on lands most owners between $700,000 and $1.4 million before the doors ever open, and that's before a single quarter has been collected.
This is where the passive income story really collapses, because a mini golf course is a maintenance business wearing a leisure business's clothes. Turf doesn't just wear out on schedule, it gets damaged constantly. Cigarette burns, ball gouges, kids digging at the seams. Budget $8,000 to $15,000 a year in spot repairs alone, separate from the eventual full replacement. Water features are relentless. Pump motors burn out, algae has to be chemically managed, and in any climate with a real winter, the entire system has to be drained, winterized, and recommissioned every single year, a cycle that runs $10,000 to $20,000 annually in labor and parts. Mechanical obstacles, the mindwheel, the rotating barrels, anything with a motor, fail constantly under public use. A single mindwheel motor and belt system might only cost $400 to replace, but multiply that across a dozen moving obstacles getting abused by children daily, and mechanical maintenance alone runs $15,000 to $25,000 a year. Insurance is heavier than most new owners expect, because this is a business built entirely around members of the public swinging blunt objects near each other. General liability, plus a specific rider for the batting cages, which insurers treat as meaningfully higher risk than the golf side, commonly runs $12,000 to $25,000 a year combined. Utilities are non-trivial too. Night lighting across a full acre-plus property, water feature pumps running continuously in season, and HVAC for any indoor arcade or snack area, typically $2,000 to $4,000 a month in peak season. Then there's the cost nobody puts in the pitch deck, pest and vegetation control, at $3,000 to $6,000 a year, because a course is landscaping first and a game course second, and landscaping left unmanaged for one season looks like a business in decline even if revenue is fine. Add it up, and a fully loaded operating budget before payroll commonly runs $80,000 to $140,000 a year just to keep the physical product from visibly degrading. That's the real cost of the course just sits there.
Ticket pricing for 18 holes typically runs between $10 and $16 per adult and $8 to $12 per child, and the entire economics of the business live inside that narrow band, because raising it even $2 measurably suppresses group bookings. Minigolf is priced per person, so a family of 4 feels every dollar of an increase 4 times over. The actual profit engine isn't the round itself, it's the add-ons, the $4 soda, the $6 basket of arcade tokens, the batting cage upsell at $8 for 20 pitches, the birthday party package that bundles a private area, cake, and 2 hours of unlimited play for $250 to $400. A course that sells around for $12 and stops there is leaving the majority of its potential revenue on the table. The round is the loss leader that gets a family through the gate. Birthday parties deserve special attention because they're disproportionately profitable. They book on weekday afternoons that would otherwise sit empty. They come with guaranteed headcounts, and they convert almost entirely to add-on spend. A well-run course books 20 to 30 parties a month in peak season, each one worth 2 to 4 times a walk-in group spend. The psychology being sold isn't a great round of golf, it's an afternoon where nobody has to make a decision, which is exactly why pricing simple bundled packages outperforms granular a la carte pricing every time.
Here is the structural insight that explains why this business model works at all. Mini-golf runs almost entirely on part-time, minimum or near minimum wage teenage and young adult labor. And that single fact is the difference between a course that's profitable and one that isn't. A course doesn't need a skilled trade workforce. It needs someone to hand out putters, someone to run the register, someone to sweep up, and one person with basic mechanical aptitude to fix a jammed windmill. That role can be filled at $12 to $16 an hour depending on region, compared to a business like a restaurant that requires trained cooks at a materially higher wage floor. A mid-size course in peak season runs 4 to 6 staff on a weekend shift and 2 to 3 on a weekday, adding up to $180,000 to $260,000 a year in total payroll for a business generating $700,000 to $1.2 million in peak season-heavy revenue. That ratio, labor at roughly 20 to 25% of revenue, is dramatically better than the 30 to 35% that's typical in full-service food and beverage. The catch is, seasonality cuts the other way here too. An owner still has to retain a skeleton crew through the off-season for maintenance and reopening prep, which means paying a baseline labor cost through months that produce little to no revenue at all.
Most mini-golf builds are financed through SBA 504 or 7A loans because the real estate and fixed equipment make the business a reasonable fit for government-backed small business lending. A typical structure puts down 10 to 20% cash, financing the remaining $600,000 to $1 million plus over a 10 to 20-year term at rates that, in this rate environment, land in the 8 to 10% range. That translates to a monthly debt service commonly between $6,000 and $11,000 before a single operating expense is paid, meaning the business needs to clear that number every month of the year, including the 3 winter months when revenue may be close to zero in colder climates. Property tax adds another layer, typically 1 to 2.5% of assessed property value annually, depending on jurisdiction, which, on a $1 million build-out, is $10,000 to $25,000 a year on its own. Break-even timelines vary enormously by climate and location quality, but a well-sited course with strong summer traffic typically reaches cash flow break-even in 3 to 5 years and full payoff of the initial investment in 7 to 12. A poorly sited course, one relying on hope rather than traffic counts, frequently never breaks even at all and quietly closes within 3 to 4 years, which is a far more common outcome than the success stories suggest. Seasonality isn't a minor factor in this business, it is the business. In most non-southern US markets, 60 to 75% of annual revenue is generated in a 12 to 14-week window between late May and early September. The remaining 8 months produce a trickle, propped up mostly by birthday parties and the occasional warm weekend. That means the entire year's fixed costs, debt service, insurance, baseline payroll, property tax, have to be substantially funded by 3 summer months' worth of cash flow, and an owner who has a mediocre July is not making it back in October. Weather risk compounds this directly. A rainy summer in a business with no indoor fallback can single-handedly turn a profitable year into a break-even one. Operators in year-round warm climates like Florida and the Southwest are structurally advantaged here in a way northern operators simply can't engineer around. Competitive risk is real, but slower moving. A new Topgolf or trampoline park opening nearby can meaningfully erode a course's teen and young adult segment, though it rarely touches the birthday party and young family core, which remains the more defensible part of the customer base. The single biggest risk, though, is simply opening in the wrong location, one with poor road visibility or the wrong income demographic nearby. Because unlike a restaurant that can pivot its menu, a mini golf course cannot cheaply relocate 18 holes of concrete and turf once it's poured. The excellent outcome,
A well-located course in a warm weather or high-traffic suburban corridor with a strong birthday party program and a batting cage add-on, generating $1.1 to $1.4 million in annual revenue against $850,000 in total costs, including debt service, netting $250,000 to $400,000 a year to the owner once the loan is paying down principal rather than just interest. These operators typically own 2 or 3 locations within a decade because the operating playbook, once proven, repeats well. The acceptable outcome is a single course in a moderate climate suburb generating $600,000 to $800,000 a year against $550,000 to $650,000 in total costs, netting $80,000 to $150,000 to an owner who is also working the business part-time. This is the most common outcome for a reasonably run course, a solid small business income, not a passive fortune. The failure case is a course built on optimistic traffic assumptions in a location with weak visibility or a short season, generating $350,000 to $450,000 against fixed costs that don't meaningfully shrink regardless of revenue. Debt service, insurance, and property tax don't care how many families showed up. These courses typically limp for 3 to 5 years before being sold at a loss or quietly bulldozed for a car wash, which is, in its own way, a fitting piece of symmetry. Mini-golf isn't a bad business. It's a genuinely good small business, for the right owner, in the right location, run with realistic expectations. The math works because labor is cheap, the product is durable, and the demand, a cheap group activity nobody has to think hard about, never really goes away. But it is not passive, and it is not a fortune maker on its own. The real money isn't made swinging a putter past a windmill. It's made in the birthday party calendar, the token machine, and the batting cage upsell, run by an owner who shows up in February to fix a frozen pump so that everything is ready the moment the weather turns. The windmill isn't the business. The windmill is just what gets people through the gate.